So the last case we're going to do today is Tinker v. Moines, which comes out of Iowa in 1969. And so in this case, a group of high school students uh, communicated to administration, friends, whomever, that they were going to begin wearing black armbands in protest to the Vietnam War. They told virtually everyone they were going to do it. Administration in the high school told them not to do it. They did it anyways. And the school board suspended these students. Or not the school board, the school district. So these students brought suit claiming that their First Amendment rights were violated. Now, the question in this case is kind of twofold. First, do high school, just public school students or parochial school students, students under the age of 18, have the same First Amendment protections as everyone else in the school environment? And two, was the prohibition of these armbands a content-based restriction, or was it a restriction on conduct? So the Supreme Court says unanimously that while students may not unanimously, the court says very clearly that while the students may not have the same level of First Amendment protection in the schoolhouse as they do outside, they do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate, that they don't simply go away, that students do have a protected First Amendment right. It's not as broad as outside of school, but it absolutely still exists. And the reason why their speech is protected in this case is there was no more pure example of speech. Like, this was clearly speech. It wasn't conduct. They communicated they were going to wear black armbands in opposition to the Vietnam War. They told everyone that the black armbands represented their opposition to the Vietnam War, and then they wore the black armbands. That isn't conduct. They were very clearly communicating their speech. And the reason by which they decided to wear the armbands was one of the reasons that the speech ultimately gets protected. They chose to wear the black armbands because they realized that speaking at school can, by its very nature, be disruptive. But the wearing of clothing and something as innocuous as an armband communicates their position in a silent, non-disruptive manner, that they're communicating their beliefs. They're doing so with all political context, but they're doing it in a way that doesn't disrupt the school environment. In fact, the majority says the only disruption to the school environment that actually occurred was the teachers and administration taking the students out of class. That was the disruption, not them wearing the armbands. And so for the majority in this case, one, students absolutely have the right to speech, but it's different. It's modified to some extent. It's not nearly as broad because the school has as its goal education, which is different than an environment where you can openly communicate your viewpoints. But also that the method by which they engaged in their speech, what the court in this case terms as symbolic speech, is as close to pure speech as you can actually get, because everyone involved knew what the content of the message was. In fact, had there been any question about the content of what they were trying to communicate, administration would not have known what they were trying to communicate, and therefore wouldn't have known that they were protesting the Vietnam War, which was the crux of the reason why they were taken out of class. And so this case is a cornerstone part of First Amendment jurisprudence in the United States, in that it does give public school students some rights in order to communicate their speech, though it does place limits upon them. But it also makes very clear, and this is why I think it's even more important, the differences between symbolic speech and speech. And symbolic speech is the communicating of a message without oral context, without oral communication. And in this case, the court goes, there's no question about whether their symbolic speech was speech. It's as close to pure speech, oral communication, as you can absolutely get because they told everyone. Everyone knew what the armbands meant. And so there was no question about whether it was what the speech was. It was symbolic speech. That speech was political in nature. It was non-disruptive to the environment, and therefore it has to be protected. The dissents in this case ultimately don't carry the day. They're not persuasive in any fashion, and because of that, I don't worry about them. Questions? Why did the school district care so much? 1968 in Iowa. That's all you need to know. These were liberal students communicating a liberal message in one of the most conservative states in the Union, and doing so in a way in which naive people would interpret their opposition to the war as anti-patriotism. It's not like that just started recently. It's not like we just learned that when you say Black Lives Matter, some people think that's anti-American or anti-police. Nuance is not something most individuals have.